The front door creaked open, keys jangling in the lock as Mark Winters stepped into his home after another exhausting 12-hour shift. The scent hit him first, lemon polish and something baking. Then came the sight that stopped him cold. A woman in an expensive business suit was on her knees scrubbing his kitchen floor. Their eyes met across the room, her hands freezing mid-motion, a strange silence hanging between them. In that moment, neither could have imagined how their lives would intertwine, or that the reason behind her unexpected presence would change everything he thought he knew about kindness, second chances, and healing from the past. If you've ever wondered whether genuine compassion still exists in our world, this story will restore your faith in humanity. Like, subscribe, and join me on this journey that proves sometimes angels appear in the most unexpected forms. Mark Winters hadn't known true exhaustion until he became both mother and father to his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. The past 18 months since Sarah's death had been a blur of grief, adjustment, and the constant struggle to keep their lives from falling apart completely. Tonight was no different as he trudged up the apartment building stairs, his security guard uniform stiff with dried sweat, his mind already calculating how much time he had to make dinner, help with homework, and maybe, if he was lucky, shower before collapsing into bed. The apartment door stuck slightly as it always did. He made a mental note to fix it someday, adding it to the endless list of repairs he never had time for. As he stepped inside, the familiar scent of their modest 2-bedroom apartment was different. Cleaner. Fresher. "Hello," he called out cautiously, his security training kicking in as he moved forward. The sight in his kitchen made him freeze. A woman with sleek dark hair pulled into a professional bun was kneeling on his dingy linoleum, scrubbing vigorously at a stain he'd been meaning to tackle for months. She wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent, the jacket draped carefully over one of his mismatched kitchen chairs, her silk blouse sleeves rolled up to her elbows. She looked up, equally startled, and for a moment they just stared at each other. "Who are you?" Mark finally managed, his voice tight with confusion and alarm. "Where's my daughter?" The woman stood quickly, smoothing her skirt. "Mr. Winters, I'm so sorry. I'm Eleanor Chen. Lily is in her room doing homework with my assistant, Zoe." She gestured toward the hallway. "I can explain everything." Before she could continue, a blur of pink pajamas and curly brown hair came racing down the hall. "Daddy!" Lily launched herself into his arms, and he caught her automatically, his eyes never leaving the stranger in his kitchen. "Hey, pumpkin," he said, hugging his daughter close while trying to make sense of the situation. "What's going on here?" "Ms. Eleanor is helping us," Lily exclaimed, her face bright with excitement. "She brought groceries and fixed the sink and made cookies. Real ones, not from the store." Mark set his daughter down gently, his confusion deepening. "Lily, why don't you go finish your homework while I talk to Ms. Eleanor?" Once Lily had reluctantly returned to her room, Mark turned to the woman, crossing his arms defensively. "I don't understand. How did you get into my apartment? Why are you here?" Eleanor wiped her hands on a dish towel, her composure perfect despite the unusual circumstances. "I'm the CEO of Horizon Technologies. Your daughter comes to our community center after-school program." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Yesterday, I overheard Lily telling one of our volunteers that she was worried about you because you work so hard and never have time to rest. She mentioned that you've been trying to clean the apartment for weeks but never have enough time between your shifts." Mark felt heat rise to his face, embarrassment, pride, and something like anger mixing together. "So you just decided to break into our home?" "No," Eleanor said quickly. "The program director has your spare key for emergencies. I should have called first, and I apologize for that. It was impulsive, but I just wanted to help." "I don't need charity," Mark said stiffly, though he was painfully aware of the state of his apartment, or rather, what it had been before this woman apparently spent the afternoon cleaning it. Eleanor's expression softened. "It's not charity, Mr. Winters. It's..." She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "May I show you something?" Without waiting for his response, she reached for her purse on the counter and pulled out her phone. After a few taps, she handed it to him. On the screen was a photograph of a young woman with a small boy, maybe 3 years old, standing in front of what looked like a subsidized housing complex. "That's me and my son, 20 years ago," Eleanor said quietly. "I was a single mother working 3 jobs, barely keeping us afloat. One day, I came home to find that someone had cleaned my apartment, stocked my refrigerator, and left a note offering me a job interview at their company." She took a deep breath. "That person changed my life. I promised myself that if I ever had the means, would pay it forward." Mark stared at the photo, something shifting in his chest. The woman in the picture looked exhausted but determined, with the same fierce love in her eyes that he felt for Lily every day. "What happened?" he asked, his voice softer now. "I got the job. Worked my way up from administrative assistant to management. Put myself through night school. Eventually started my own company." She smiled slightly. "My son is in medical school now." Mark handed the phone back, unsure what to say. The anger had drained from him, leaving only a bone-deep weariness and something else, a reluctant gratitude he wasn't ready to acknowledge. "I still don't understand why you do this yourself," he said finally. "You're a CEO. Couldn't you have hired someone?" Eleanor's eyes met his directly. "Some things you don't delegate, Mr. Winters. Some debts you pay personally." Before Mark could respond, the oven timer dinged. Eleanor moved to the kitchen with the ease of someone who had spent hours learning its layout. She pulled out a casserole dish, the aroma of home-cooked food filling the small apartment. "I hope you don't mind," she said, setting the dish on a trivet. "It's just a simple lasagna. There's enough for leftovers tomorrow." Mark stood there, watching this elegant, successful woman move around his humble kitchen, and felt something crack inside him, the hard shell of pride and independence he'd built since Sarah's death. For 18 months, he'd refused all offers of help, determined to prove he could do it all himself. For 18 months, he'd been drowning. "Why?" he asked again, his voice barely audible. Eleanor paused, her expression serious. "Because 18 years ago, I was you. Because your daughter loves you and worries about you. Because sometimes we all need someone to see us struggling and step in, even when we're too proud to ask." She smiled slightly. "And because I remember what it's like to be so tired you can't see straight, but still have to make dinner and help with homework and somehow be everything to someone who depends on you completely." Mark felt the sting of tears and blinked rapidly, turning away under the pretense of hanging up his jacket. When he trusted himself to speak again, he said, "Thank you. I don't know what else to say." "You don't have to say anything," Eleanor replied. "Just eat while it's hot, and maybe consider the job offer I left on your counter." "Job offer?" Eleanor nodded toward an envelope propped against the fruit bowl, a fruit bowl that had been empty that morning but now contained fresh apples and bananas. "Horizon Technologies needs a new head of security. The hours are 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. The salary is double what you're making now, with full benefits and a childcare allowance." Mark stared at the envelope, speechless. "You're qualified," Eleanor continued matter-of-factly. "I checked your background. Military service, security training, excellent references from your current employer. This isn't charity, Mr. Winters. It's good business sense on my part." "I don't know what to say," Mark repeated, overwhelmed. "Say you'll think about it," Eleanor suggested, gathering her jacket and purse. "And maybe say you'll let me know if Lily would like to join my son's old Little League team. They practice at the park near your apartment on Saturdays. I coach sometimes when work allows." Mark nodded, still trying to process everything. "I'll think about it." Eleanor smiled, a genuine warmth in her eyes. "That's all I ask." She called down the hallway, "Zoe, we should be going now." A young woman with bright blue hair appeared from Lily's room, followed by a disappointed-looking Lily. "But we were just getting to the good part of the story," Lily protested. "I'll finish it next time," Zoe promised, gathering her things. As the two women prepared to leave, Mark found his voice again. "Wait," he said. Would you like to stay for dinner? There's plenty, and it seems wrong for you to cook and not eat." Eleanor hesitated, then smiled. "We'd like that very much, wouldn't we, Zoe?" The blue-haired assistant nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. I'm starving, and Eleanor's lasagna is legendary at the office." And so Mark Winters found himself sitting at his kitchen table, a table that had been wiped clean of months of accumulated clutter, sharing a meal with three people who had been strangers hours before. As Lily chatted animatedly about her day and Zoe entertained her with silly faces, Mark caught Eleanor's eye across the table. "Thank you," he mouthed silently. She nodded once, understanding in her eyes. No more words were needed. 3 months later, Mark adjusted his tie as he prepared for another day at Horizon Technologies. The morning sunlight streamed through clean windows, illuminating a home that no longer felt like it was barely holding together. His new job had transformed their lives in ways he couldn't have imagined that fateful evening. "Lily. Breakfast is ready," he called, placing a plate of scrambled eggs on the table. His daughter bounded into the kitchen, already dressed in her school uniform. "Is Eleanor coming to my recital tonight?" she asked, digging into her breakfast. "She wouldn't miss it," Mark assured her. "She's even leaving her big meeting early." In the weeks following their unusual first meeting, Eleanor had become a fixture in their lives. What had started as professional mentorship had gradually evolved into friendship, and lately, perhaps something more. Mark wasn't ready to put a name to it yet, but he found himself looking forward to their conversations, to her dry sense of humor, to the way she listened when he finally opened up about Sarah and the grief he'd been carrying alone. As he drove Lily to school that morning, he reflected on how much had changed. He was no longer exhausted all the time. He had evenings and weekends with his daughter. The apartment was always clean now, not because Eleanor did it for them, but because he had the energy to maintain it himself. "Daddy," Lily said suddenly from the back seat, "are you still sad all the time?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean, pumpkin?" Lily fidgeted with her backpack strap. "Before. You were always sad, even when you smiled. But now you laugh for real again." Mark felt his throat tighten. "I'm not sad all the time anymore," he said honestly. "I still miss Mommy, and I always will. But I'm happy too, now." Lily nodded, satisfied. "That's good. Mommy would want you to be happy. She told me to take care of you, you know." Mark nearly swerved the car in surprise. "She did? When?" "Before she went to heaven. She said, 'Take care of Daddy for me, Lilybug. He's going to need extra love.'" Lily recited the words as if they were a sacred trust. "So when I saw Eleanor at the community center, I told her you needed help. I took care of you, just like I promised." Mark pulled into the school drop-off lane and turned to look at his daughter, tears welling in his eyes. All this time, he'd thought Eleanor had simply overheard Lily talking. He hadn't realized his daughter had deliberately sought help for him. "You did take care of me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're the best daughter anyone could ask for." Lily beamed, leaning forward to kiss his cheek before hopping out of the car. "See you at the recital, Daddy. Tell Eleanor I'm practicing my curtsy." As he watched her skip into the school building, Mark pulled out his phone and sent a text to Eleanor. "Did you know Lily asked you to help us?" "She didn't just mention it, she asked." The response came quickly, "Of course. Why do you think I listened? That little girl of yours has quite the persuasive skills. She told me her mom would be sad that you were so tired all the time. How could I say no to that?" Mark sat in the car, overwhelmed by the realization that his daughter had orchestrated the change in their lives, that she had been looking out for him all along, keeping a promise to her mother. Later that evening, as he watched Lily perform in her school recital, Eleanor sitting beside him with genuine pride on her face, Mark finally allowed himself to feel something he had denied for too long: hope. Hope for a future that held more than just survival. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the family he thought was broken beyond repair was simply reforming into something new. When Lily took her bow, her eyes searching the audience until she found them, her face lighting up at their standing ovation, Mark felt the last piece of his shattered heart begin to heal. And when Eleanor's hand found his in the darkened auditorium, he didn't pull away. Some angels, he had learned, didn't come with wings and halos. Sometimes they came in business suits, with cleaning supplies and lasagna recipes and job offers that changed everything. And sometimes, they were sent by 7-year-old girls keeping promises to mothers in heaven. 6 months after the day he found Eleanor cleaning his kitchen floor, Mark stood in that same kitchen, now bright with fresh paint and new curtains, watching as Lily and Eleanor's son David attempted to make pancakes together. At 23, David was patient with Lily's enthusiastic but messy approach to cooking, guiding her hands as she poured batter onto the griddle. "Not too much, Lilybug," David cautioned, using the nickname that had once been Sarah's alone but somehow felt right coming from him. "We want them to be round, not blob-shaped." "But blob pancakes taste better," Lily insisted, making David laugh. Eleanor appeared beside Mark, handing him a cup of coffee. "They're good together," she observed quietly. Mark nodded, taking the cup gratefully. "He's good with her. Thank you for bringing him this weekend." "He wanted to come," Eleanor said. "He says Lily reminds him of himself at that age, all energy and no filter." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the unlikely siblings they were slowly becoming. Mark had worried about introducing Lily to David, afraid it might be too much too soon, but the medical student had won his daughter over immediately by bringing her a real stethoscope and letting her listen to his heartbeat. "I have something to tell you," Eleanor said suddenly, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Mark turned to her, concerned by her tone. "What is it?" "I've been offered a position on the board of a major tech company. It would mean more money, more influence for the community programs I want to develop." "That's wonderful," Mark said sincerely. "You deserve it." Eleanor took a deep breath. "It's in Chicago." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. In the months since she'd entered their lives, neither had put a label on what was developing between them, but Mark couldn't deny the hollow feeling that opened in his chest at the thought of her leaving. "When would you go?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. "That's the thing," Eleanor said, turning to face him fully. "I'm not sure I want to go at all. For the first time in my career, the job isn't the most important thing in my life." Mark set down his coffee cup, afraid his shaking hands might betray him. "What is, then?" Eleanor's eyes moved to Lily and David, then back to Mark. "This. Whatever this is becoming. I've spent 20 years climbing the corporate ladder, proving myself, building something I could be proud of. But these past 6 months..." She shook her head slightly. "I've never been happier coming home from work. I've never looked forward to weekends more. I've never felt more like myself than when I'm with you and Lily." Mark felt something expand in his chest, something that had been tightly coiled for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe freely. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Eleanor smiled, the confident CEO momentarily replaced by a woman taking a leap of faith. "I'm saying I'd like to see where this goes."